Hello lovely people, this week I'm doing the art movements tag.
Sophie Vlogs.
This tag was invented by Miriam at Between Lines and Life. I will leave a link to her channel below. She's fabulous, I love her to pieces. Essentially, I've been meaning to do this tag for so long, but I got stuck on some of the questions, so I didn't. And I've just been thinking about it, and then I just decided to go for it. I really like art. I really like art history. I don't feel like I'm super knowledgeable, but then I do have like knowledge about little pockets. So it's like a thing that I'm really passionate about, but also like, I don't know anything. So yeah, I'm going to go for it. I will include the questions down below, so if you fancy doing it too, I would love to see your video. I'm just going to dive right in. Question number 1 is Baroque. Name an extravagant book character or a character who lives an extravagant life. I'm going with one that I feel like is really obvious, but I'm going with Gatsby from The Great Gatsby, because what I find interesting about Gatsby is that it's this deliberately constructed extravagance, and like, he isn't necessarily the beneficiary of the extravagant. It's like a performed thing that he puts on for this idea of Daisy, rather than like he is an inherently extravagant person, if that makes sense. So that was just like an interesting thing. Question number 2 is Impressionism, a book that left a lasting impression on you. Tell us why. I thought of two. I thought of Beyond the Deepwoods, which is by Paul Stewart, illustrated by Chris Riddell, which is the first book of the Edge Chronicles, and as I've mentioned a number of times, the Edge Chronicles was one of those series which I adored, probably more than I loved Harry Potter, actually. Well, that's a big thing. But the Edge Chronicles is really I loved to read ever since I was little, but the Edge Chronicles is one that I adored with my whole being. But specifically Beyond the Deepwoods, I love moments in children's books specifically where people have like an assertion of the power of self and of knowing yourself and of being yourself, and Beyond the Deepwoods ends with our main character Twig really claiming himself and his identity, and I just feel like that's something that's really powerful for children to read about, and I definitely found it powerful to read about when I was a child, and I feel like that's influenced like a lot of like who I am as an adult. And again, for a similar reason, my other option is the Tiffany Aching series from the Terry Pratchett Discworld, because there's a very similar thing there, which is this understanding of your own power and your inner strength in many ways, but also like a lot of the power of witches is not necessarily like, oh, I perform gigantic spells and blah blah blah. It's like this quiet, just doing the practicalities of life. And Tiffany Aching has many moments in her series which involve planting your feet on the ground and saying, this is mine and you can't have it, and this selfishness of strength and all these things which I'm like a sucker for. So yeah, those are two books which I read when I was quite young, which had a huge influence on me and my ideas of like being a person. So yeah. Question number 3 is Expressionism, a book with a very personal and specific, possibly unique outlook on the world. I've gone for the poetry of C.P. Cavafy, who is a Greek poet. Specifically, I really like his historical poems. They're my favourite of his work. I did a module on modern Greek literature when I was doing my English and Classical Studies degree, and somewhere on the internet is an essay that I wrote about the work of Cavafy's historical poems, and I think it was the idea of self-doubt. I can't really remember. I'll leave a link to it below so you can read it if you're interested. But I feel like Cavafy has this really interesting looking towards history. Like, he always goes for the loser in history. So many of his poems are from the point of view of someone that we know is losing the battle, or is about or has already lost. And one of my favourite poems is The God Abandons Antony, which is just before Antony loses. And he's looking down on the city of Alexandria, and there's this line in it, the Alexandria that you are losing, and there's this constant focusing of the lens on history's victims, and I just find that really interesting as like an outlook on history, you know, because like so much of what we view as history is like defined by the winners, but then what happens when you look through the lens of the losers, stuff like that. So like he's wonderful. If you haven't checked him out, I really recommend him. I love him so much. Question number 4 is Surrealism, a book that puts a spin on the reality of our living, or a sci-fi book you would recommend. I went for The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert Heinlein. Is that how you say his last name? I don't know. I felt like it's a science fiction book that I read fairly recently, and this interesting look at the practicalities of if you are to throw over a government and form a rebellion. And then in response to that, it really like unpicks like methods of governing. And I don't know, like I feel science fiction is this wonderful vehicle for exploring topics that are oh so human, but also like I've never read one before that was so like, we're gonna really practically look at like, if you were to overthrow the government, what do you replace it with that's not just a mirror image of it, but now you're in charge. So that was just an interesting recent read that I thought would work. Question number 5, Pontilism. I can never say that word, Pontilism. A book where different narratives make the bigger picture. The Dovekeepers by Alice Hoffman is the tale of a real event that happened whereby a Jewish stronghold in the middle of the desert held out against the Romans for a remarkably long time, and then when the Romans finally got in, they found that everyone had committed mass suicide apart from 2 women and a couple of children, and this tells the tale of those women and how they got there. And it's told through the perspective of multiple women, and it's not until very near the end that you have an idea of which of those women are the ones who have survived. It was a very interesting way of telling this story of something very real that did happen, and then of also just examining what being a woman was like and that sort of thing. So that was a really good read. Not always the easiest of reads, I will say, but I'm really glad I read that, and it fits quite well. Question number 6 is Pop Art, a book that criticises consumerism in some way or makes you look critically at current times. I'm going with Eat Up by Ruby Tandoh because it is a very interesting examination of the way that our society has, the relationship it has with food and all of the things that are associated with food, and stuff like unpicking the shame that we link to food quite a lot, and then also highlighting relationships with food that you don't always think about, like food with gender, food with sexuality, food with class, food with race, that sort of thing. I really am overdue a reread of that book because I feel like it's one that has a lot to give. Question number 7 is Dadaism, a weird book or a book that puts spin on the novel format. I'm going to go with The Bees by Laline because every time I have to try and describe this book to people, I'm like, it's about bees, but it's also kind of a dystopian, and they're bees. And I always fail, so like, maybe read it like a Goodreads summary instead of relying on me, because I suck at summarising that book. Question number 8 is Performance Art, a book that would make a great movie or your favourite play. I'm gonna go for both. So, my favourite play, I'm very specifically, this is not my favourite play of all time, this is just a really great performance of a play that I want more people to see. There is a recording, it's one of the Globe Theatre live recording things. It's of A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's fucking brilliant. I don't mean to just... It is. It takes A Midsummer Night's Dream and it picks up on the fact that over on Untitled Chapter, I can never say anything today, the fairies are fighting over this boy, and he's referred to in the text as an Indian boy. So the play itself is set in the context of India, which is not just like an excuse for beautiful sets and stuff like this, but it has a role to play. A lot of these like speeches and stuff are sometimes set to music. There's a sitar player who is a recurring point, and things are set to the rhythm of the music that he's playing. They also changed the gender of Helena to Helenus, and there's an interview with the director halfway through during the mid-time bit, where she talks about how it's because she's always felt that Helena is slightly wrong done by, because she spends the whole play being like, oh hey dude, I like you, and the dude's just like, no, you suck. Whereas in this way round, it's not that the love like spells at the end make him love Helena, it's that Demetrius for the whole play, and he really deliberately plays it like this, the actor, has been having an inner conflict about the fact that he does love Helenus, but he is struggling to face up to that, to deal with that, to process that, and rather what the love spell does at the end is it allows him to step outside of his head and step outside of society's expectations or whatever the things that are holding him back, and allows him to just experience the love that he has for him, rather than like, now you're in love with someone even though they're a dick. Does that make any sense? I don't know. I just think it's a really cracking performance. My actual like favourite plays that I would really like to see adapted is like, I would really like to see some Tennessee Williams plays adapted that actually retain some of the hinted gay relationships / themes. Cough, cough, cat in a hot tin roof, I'm looking at you. That's just how I feel. I'll move on. I feel like we've gone to a place. Bonus 1. A fiction book that discusses or features art in some way. I'm just going to throw 3 out there off the top of my head. The Strawberry Girl by Lisa Stromme is an interesting look at Edvard Munch if you bear in mind the fact that it fudges up some historical details. So it's a good way to give you a better understanding of what drives his art and the themes in his art if you just ignore the fact that it is not biographically true. The Improbability of Love by Hannah Rothschild the painting has a point of view, which I think is a really innovative thing, which I'm still thinking is cool. And then finally, The Muse by Jessie Burton. Again, we're tracing a painting, that sort of thing. Those are just 3 off the top of my head. I read a lot more non-fiction arty things than fiction things, I think. Bonus number 2 is where I'm going to ramble for a bit, so you can stop watching if you're not actually interested. But who's your favourite artist and what's your favourite painting? This is a hard question. So I wrote down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 artists. Oh, 10 actually, 10. Okay, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to try and be as concise as possible. First of all, I bloody love pre-Raphaelites. I'm a ginger. I got mocked for being a ginger quite a bit as a child, but I never minded. Well, I did mind, but like I retained the fact that I loved the pre-Raphaelites, and the pre-Raphaelites loved gingers. Therefore, everyone else was wrong, because Dante Gabriel Rossetti knows how to paint a good ginge. But Dante Gabriel Rossetti is like potentially my favourite from an art point of view, because his are the ones that I fall in love with the most. William Morris is my favourite from like a, I think you're an impressive human being point of view, because everything William Morris did was just like, oh, I'm going to learn, I think it would be cool to write poetry, so now I'm going to write some cool poetry. Oh, now I'm going to make wallpapers and art. Oh, now I'm going to learn how to make furniture. Oh, I'm going to start a printing press. Oh, I'm just going to found the arts and crafts movement, etc. And also, like, he's interesting from, like, a political point of view as well. I just think William Morris was just really cool. After that as well, more recently, ones that who I really like is Alphonse Mucha. I went to a exhibition in Glasgow about all of his artwork, and that really helped me get a better understanding of him. And like, I've always thought his artwork was beautiful, but to see it in real life and to be like up close with it really just transforms how you experience it, obviously. Another one is Gustav Klimt. I did a textiles course when I was back in school, and we did our own like felt pieces inspired by the patterns within Gustav Klimt's work, and that made me then think about the patterns within Gustav Klimt's work and what they could mean and stuff like this. So now I have like this great love for his work. I also love gold, like just as a colour, so like obviously Klimt, lots of gold, but also this like what do these symbols mean, etc. Some other cool people. Rubens. Specifically Samson and Delilah. Look at the light, look at the shade, look at Samson's back, it looks pretty cool. Titian, also great. Monet, vividly remember seeing my first Monet in person and just being like, wow. Bernini, how do you do that to stone? I'm still in awe. The Venus of Willendorf, she's an icon and I love her. Laura Knight, saw some of her work in an art gallery recently, thought that was pretty cool. Also the entire like Glasgow School, specifically people like Margaret MacDonald Mackintosh, which is a mouthful for me to say, but I like this, just the entire like Glasgow School style, beautiful. Also, an honourable mention, I never know how to say his name, don't know if I'm saying it right, mangling it with my little Bristolian accent, but Odilon Radon? Hope that's right. Specifically his pastel work, specifically Ophelia Amongst the Flowers. He does this stuff with charcoal, which horrifies me because it's like the stuff of nightmares. But he did this pastoral piece called Ophelia Amongst the Flowers, and in my first year of university I did an art history module, and it was like the best. I had the greatest of times. If I had money, I would do an art history degree, but I don't, so I'm not. But I had to like take myself off to London, find like a painting. I can't remember what the topic was, something along the lines of like dealing with a subject matter in like an innovative way or something. And what I love about Ophelia Amongst the Flowers is like the iconic images of Ophelia that we have, including like the famous John William Waterhouse one, where she's like lying in a river floating away. Like Ophelia is the focus, but this one, Ophelia, like if this is your canvas, Ophelia is like here, and it's just her head, and her head is very ill-defined. It's mostly the colour of the canvas. But then what the focus of the work is like the actual flowers, and they're not what other people do where you meticulously reproduce the flowers that are mentioned in the play or stuff like this. They're these flowers that he's just invented that are like from his imagination. And like it just is such an interesting way of dealing with this subject which like we're so familiar with and blah. And I just like had so many thoughts. I love it. This is the thing that happens is I'm like, oh, I don't know a lot about art because I panic because I'm really bad with remembering like the names of works, like the dates of works, like all of these like information fact things. Not good at. When it comes to like sit me in front of a painting and I'll interpret a painting, love it so much. Art's great, you guys. Now we reached the bit where I'm supposed to tag people, and I have to confess that it's been literally so long since I saw this video. I wrote the questions on my phone, and every now and then I look at them and I go, oh, that'll be a good book for that. I have no idea who Miriam tagged. I want to tag Meg at Tome Infinity because she is an artist, but I have a feeling that she's both been already tagged by Miriam and already recorded the video, and I think I've seen it. I might be making that up, I don't know. But you're tagged if you haven't. Oh, I didn't do this bit in advance, and I don't know who I'm friends with who likes art. Bookish North? Do you like art? Feel free to do it. Matt at MCS Books? Do you like art? This is just me now asking people if they like art. Look, if you want to do it, and please tell me you've done it, because I would love to see your video. It would be great. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. I really feel like I'm melting into like a little pool of oddness. So I think I'm going to call it a day. I've just got really over-enthusiastic about art and I'm losing my ability to function, so I'm going to just go. I hope you're having a really lovely time being you, and I'll see you next week where hopefully we're a little bit more together again.